everyone, welcome to my talk today that aims to help any of you who are preparing for a Trainee Advanced Nurse Practitioner interview or an Advanced Clinical Practitioner interview. Please note this is just for UK roles only, and I'm going to go through what advanced practice is. I'll signpost some key reading and resources and talk through how to systematically structure your background research to help you answer potential generic interview questions. I hope you find it helpful. If you do, remember to give me a thumbs up on YouTube. If you have any feedback, put it in the YouTube comments. I've lots more free videos on my YouTube channel, Support and Career Development for Nurses, so do check those out. If you're interested in buying any of my books, I've got a book out, How to Prepare for Interviews and Develop Your Career. You'll see the links to buy them in the YouTube description. So I hope you find this helpful. So it's helpful to first reflect on what advanced practice is, as you might be asked a question at interview, what is advanced practice? And the concept of advanced practice for nurses, because I'm from that background, as a profession, was first introduced in 1990 by Barbara Sitwell, who established the first advanced nursing practice course in the Royal College of Nursing Institute. However, advanced practice is not just for nurses. Advanced clinical practitioner roles are for any allied health professional can apply for them. And Kim Manley's paper is a good paper to look at, 1997. This seminal paper presented a preliminary conceptual framework for advanced practice, and I've placed the reference at the end of this talk. The paper presented a 3-year action research study to inform the operationalisation, I can never say that word, of advanced practitioner and consultant nurse roles. And Manley describes the advanced practitioner or nurse consultant as an expert, an educator, a researcher, a strategist, a role model, and an innovator. And this seminal work informed the 4 pillars of advanced practice. So it's a good paper to look at, whichever field you're coming from. Has relevance today for nurses and all allied health professionals. And Manley's paper also described advanced nurse practitioners supporting change management and practice development. Another simple overview is given from Leary and McLean 2019, and that's a simple overview of the evolution of advanced nursing practice, past, present and future, and it also gives a global perspective, and again I've put the reference in the reference list at the end of this talk. Another document that's helpful to read is the Royal College of Nursing 2018 Standards for Advanced Level Nursing Practice. And in that document, it describes advanced practice as a level of practice rather than a type of practice. So it's not where you work, it's about being assessed as competent in practice at an advanced level, using your expert clinical knowledge and skills. And there's a vast variety of settings and roles where you can work as an advanced nurse practitioner or an advanced clinical practitioner. Advanced practitioners are educated at master's level or equivalent, and advanced practitioners make autonomous decisions in the assessment, diagnosis and the treatment of patients. So the reference for the RCN 2018 Standards for Advanced Level Nursing Practice is at the end of this talk on a reference slide. So I talked earlier about the 4 pillars of advanced practice. That reflects Kim Manley's seminal paper that I talked about in the previous slide. And the 4 areas relate to advanced clinical practice, leadership, education and research. And in 2007, NHS Education for Scotland developed the 4 advanced practice pillars further by defining the characteristics of each, which you can read in the RCN 2018 Standards for Advanced Level Nursing Practice. And the reference was on the previous slide. So those 4 pillars will underpin the roles that you are applying for. So often you'll see those 4 pillars reflected in the job descriptions, for example. An important document to review before your interview is from Health Education England, who have developed a national framework for advanced clinical practice in England. Health Education England and NHS England and NHS Improvement in 2017 launched this multi-professional framework for advanced clinical practice in England. So you find that very helpful to read, gives you more insight in relation to advanced practice, and you'll find it on Health Education England website. Health Education England also have a very helpful Centre for Advancing Practice, and the Centre for Advancing Practice has many other resources, so it's very helpful to review some of those resources before your interview. There's an advanced practice toolkit that's you can find on that website, and that offers guidance on how core capabilities relating to advanced practice can be assessed. The multi-professional framework includes core capabilities for all health and care professionals in any healthcare setting, and the framework's underpinned by the 4 pillars of advanced practice, so it all interrelates. As a trainee advanced nurse practitioner or a trainee advanced clinical practitioner, you're going to be working towards these core capabilities. So an example is clinical practice, and one of the capabilities is to demonstrate a critical understanding of your broadened level of responsibility and autonomy and the limits of own competence and professional scope of practice, including when working with complex risk, uncertainty and incomplete information. So it's helpful to review those core capabilities and the framework, this multi-professional framework, so you've got an idea of what it is. You don't need to remember every single core capability, but what is it? What's expected? So you should know that there is a core capability framework, and what are you going to be working towards? There's also an e-portfolio option that you'll see on the Centre for Advancing Practice Health Education England's website, and that's currently available for experienced staff who completed courses and training and advanced practice masters before 2017. So there's all information for the e-portfolio as well. Another helpful resource is the Apollo Nursing Resource, and this is an online resource full of fantastic resources, job plans and information that aims to provide support for UK specialist nurses and advanced practitioners to ensure expertise is valued. So that's definitely worth a look as well before your interview. So to summarise this advanced practice section of my talk, I thought it would be helpful to present the definition of advanced practice, and this was agreed by stakeholders and defined in the multi-professional framework for advanced clinical practice in England in 2017. As I said earlier, references are at the end slide. Advanced clinical practice is delivered by experienced, registered health and care practitioners. It is a level of practice characterised by a high degree of autonomy and complex decision making. This is underpinned by a master's level award or equivalent that encompasses the 4 pillars of clinical practice: leadership and management, education and research, with demonstration of core capabilities and area-specific clinical competence. So key aspects of advanced practice that I've highlighted in bold are experienced registered practitioners. You can see autonomy, decision making, etc. And it's helpful to think about how would you ensure decision making is safe, evidence-based, that decisions adhere to legal, ethical and professional boundaries, for example. Have a think about that before your interview. Think about the 4 pillars of advanced practice. Have you any examples where you can demonstrate how you're working towards those 4 pillars, where you've led a project, how you underpin your practice with evidence-based and research, how you educate others, for example. And it's helpful to have some of those practical examples that I'll talk about later when we think about the questions. And think about plans for the future. What are you interested in research-wise or for quality improvement projects, for example? They're not expecting you, obviously you're a trainee, you're applying for a trainee role, you're not expected to be at that level, but working towards and thinking about your current transferable skills is very helpful, linked to those 4 pillars. It's also interesting to note that there's future plans for regulation of advanced nursing practice, in case you're asked about this at interview, and you should know about what's going to happen in your profession if you're a nurse. In case you're asked to interview, and if you're watching this video after 2025, we may already have regulation, but you'll have gained some insights into what it was like before regulation from this video. And for example, we're currently seeing employers advertising advanced practice roles at a band 5 or 6, when Health Education England is recommending trainee advanced nurse practitioners and clinical practitioners being set at band 7, and advanced practitioners being employed as 8As when they complete their core capabilities and relevant masters or e-portfolio. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the future. If you're not a nurse, it's interesting. There's a lot of debate about whether nursing should be regulating and whether other healthcare professions may follow that route as well. So just to summarise, currently we're in 2023 and our professional body, the Nursing and Midwifery Council, is exploring regulating advanced practice, and it's currently under consultation. And this is in line with other countries and advanced practice globally. New standards for advanced practice may be approved by 2025. Advanced level nursing practice competencies are currently country specific. So across the UK 4 nations, you can check out all the information on advanced practice on your specific NHS department websites, depending where you work. I've presented the work from Health Education England as an example, and they've established a centre for advancing practice and got the helpful website and resources. But look out for future updates on regulation on NHS websites, and obviously the Nursing Midwifery website and your professional body websites, whichever profession you are from. So hopefully that will help. So prior to interview, it's important that you understand what your advanced practice training programme, your masters, consists of, what are the core capabilities that need to be demonstrated according to an advanced practice framework. You need to understand the level of work required on any master's course that's part of the training. Is this part of your training programme? What are the core capabilities you need to demonstrate? You need to be clear on what you're applying for, essentially. And hopefully by signposting some of the key documents in my previous slides, it'll help you. Just to note, it's currently May 2023 and information is always evolving and changing. However, the key principles of this video, such as checking NHS department websites for current updates, professional bodies such as the Nursing Midwifery Council, if you're another allied health profession, to check your own professional websites, will remain the same. So once you've reviewed key documents and resources, reflect on these key areas. What am I expected to do? What am I expected to achieve as part of my advanced practice training programme and the master's course being offered? What is advanced practice? How are you going to answer a question if you're asked that question? What are the 4 pillars of advanced practice? How does my current practice relate to the 4 pillars? Can I demonstrate any progression towards the 4 pillars and core capabilities? And as I said earlier, obviously you're a trainee and you're applying for a trainee role and you're not at an advanced level yet, but do you have any practical examples where you can show off developing leadership, educational research or advancing clinical skills? Any teaching you've been involved with, any service user initiatives, quality improvement projects that you've collaborated or observed, or other projects you've been involved with? I have a video on the 4 pillars of advanced practice in my YouTube channel that discusses some practical examples for more early career nurses that might help you as well and give you some ideas. Here are 3 videos on my YouTube channel you might find useful. The 4 pillars of advanced practice. There's also a video on how to start working towards those 4 pillars earlier in your career. This is helpful when you think about those transferable skills you can bring to the trainee role. And you may have to do a presentation as part of the interview because often they're quite competitive, these roles. So if you do, I have a video on preparing a presentation for a nurse interview with lots of tips. So the first part of this video focused on what advanced practice is, the 4 pillars of advanced practice and the core capabilities. So let's think a bit more about how to prepare for other questions. And I'm often contacted by staff who feel really overwhelmed and how do I start to prepare for this interview? And it's helpful to think about this systematically. So I'll give you some tips to help you focus your presentation. So there are some key systematic ways to prepare for any interview that will help you answer questions, and it's helpful to be systematic when collecting background research to start with, because it will help inform your answers at interview and it'll help you structure those answers. Firstly though, you need to review the type of interview and the format. Does it include a presentation or a value-based interview? And you need to spend time on those presentations. Don't just do them as an afterthought, because that could be the difference preference between candidates. It's a points-based system for interviews and for presentations. And if the standard is very high at interview, those presentations will differentiate between candidates. Allocate as much time as you can for preparation, which includes that presentation. As I said, they're very competitive, and the key thing is don't just spend a few hours the day before prepping for your interview. It's usually not enough for these types of posts. It takes time to do that background research, but also you need to reflect on the reading and plan for questions. And you might need to rejig your diary well before the interview, but it's worth it just so that you know that you've given it your best shot at interview. When you're looking at systematically preparing and exploring what the role entails, it's very, very helpful to book an informal visit. Try to talk to advanced nurse practitioners or advanced clinical practitioners in the role. They may have already completed the training program, and you can gain amazing insights from them that will inform any interview questions where you're asked about what the current service priorities are, what the challenges are as a trainee practitioner, how do they balance their work when they were a trainee advanced clinical practitioner, for example, what are the facilitators and the barriers to the role, what's their perspective of the service. And if you can't book an informal visit, you might be able to book a virtual meeting. But if not, review websites. You can go on employer websites, look at published papers on those roles, sort of current papers, and gain some insights into the roles. The second thing, review the job description. You might see key areas to ask on an informal visit, or that you might be asked in interview. Most job descriptions reflect the 4 pillars, and you're going to hopefully be given some clues as to any national standards that link to the specific trainee advanced role and their service priorities. So it's very helpful to look at those job descriptions. Third thing, employer and NHS websites, as I mentioned, for mission statements, key service priorities. They may ask you what you know about an institution, especially if you're an external candidate. Why have you applied for this role as an external candidate? And you may see that they've launched a new initiative that you could bring into your answer. So if they said, why do you want the, why have you chosen us as an institution, or why do you want the job? You could add, as an employer, that you see that you've recently launched something like, so recently, lots of employers are looking at the professional nurse advocate role, for example, but this helps to give a picture of someone who's taken the time to look at us as an employer, as I said, especially if you're an external candidate. So hopefully you've booked an informal visit, you've drilled down on the job description, you understand what advanced practice is, what you've applied for as well, what the programme entails, and you've done some background research on the employer, the service linked to the role. The next thing is to look at local and national policies, guidance, standards or frameworks linked to the actual role. So you've looked at the advanced practice ones, but now you need to think more specifically about this role. These may link to legal, ethical, professional standards and guidance. So for example, if you're applying for a trainee advanced clinical practitioner for the older person, and I've seen that recently been advertised, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, NICE, lists guidance and quality standards for the older person. So if you were applying for a trainee advanced nurse clinical practitioner role in that area, it's fantastic to say that you know about those, that there's a list of guidance on the NICE website. If you were applying and know what some of those standards are, if you were applying for a trainee advanced nurse practitioner for motor neurone disease, there is a quality standard for motor neurone disease that covers assessing, managing motor neurone disease, care support, planning after diagnosis. So whichever role that you are applying for as a trainee advanced clinical practitioner or nurse practitioner, there will be standards, guidance, policies around that specialist area. Are there key performance indicators linked to the specialism or field? So check NHS department websites under clinical governance and talk to your clinical governance needs or senior leads as well for that sort of information. So preparing for some generic type questions, they're going to relate to the 4 pillars usually. So it's very helpful to prepare some practical examples that align to the 4 pillars of advanced practice. Often job descriptions have headings linked to the 4 pillars, and you might be asked questions relating to any one of those 4 pillar areas. So for example, could you give me an example where you promoted quality care in practice, or where your practice is informed by an evidence base? How are you research active in your current role? Or a question on education, advanced clinical practice. So if we look at clinical practice, think about how you promote quality standards, evidence-based care in your current role. How do you keep yourself up to date? Do you act as a link nurse in the area? Do you attend conferences? Have you completed specialist courses to develop your knowledge, skills and competence? Looking at leadership and management, have you linked to any work projects? How do you support your current service manager? This is where it's helpful to start aligning to the 4 pillars before you apply for a trainee role. Ask your line manager where you can develop your leadership skills and support service needs. Education, think about where you teach, support, supervise others. It could be staff or it could be service users. Do you provide health education, health promotion? Have you created education boards or posters? Do you support students? Do you support trainee apprentices or support workers in your role? Research, you might have already completed a literature review or dissertation, so don't discount any previous research active work you've done. You should be graduates, so you'll have done literature reviews and dissertations as part of your courses. Some of you might not have done dissertations, but you'll have all done literature reviews. Any research areas you're interested in? Have you attended conference days, or do you network with local national forums? Have you observed any service improvement or quality improvement in practice? Are you leading anything? Do you link to local governance groups, the discharge, multidisciplinary group, or anything else that you've helped inform or develop in practice? It's very helpful before interview to reflect on your key transferable skills, reflect on the key difference between this trainee post and your current role, because you need to be clear about what you're applying for, what the expectation is, and what you're expected to deliver in the trainee role linked to service priorities, because you'll inevitably be asked questions about your knowledge of this trainee role. But reflecting on key transferable skills and knowledge that you are currently developing. For example, you may be asked, what transferable skills do you possess that you can bring to this role? So you want to highlight those skills aligned to the 4 pillars of advanced practice. So the previous slide hopefully will be helpful with that too. So some other areas where you can prepare for questions. You need to understand the roles and responsibilities of everybody in the team that you're going to be working with. So if you're unsure, you can ask for the team for clarification, or the recruiting lead should be able to answer questions. And you should also be aware of the external teams, local, national networks and services that you'll be collaborating with. So for example, a trainee advanced clinical practitioner for motor neurone disease should be aware of the national charity, the Motor Neurone Disease Association, who the lead consultant is for motor neurone disease with that employer. How do service users access clinics? Then we have current hot topics. You may be asked to answer a question on any current hot topic in that specialist area. So it's helpful to review journals, healthcare databases for any new initiatives or breakthroughs in the field. Classic question at interviews: how do you keep up to date with this specialist area? What was the last research paper you read in this area? How do you ensure care is evidence-based? And you can answer those and give examples if you've sort of done some research into current evidence in the area. So in summary, the interviewer is looking for 3 things. Firstly, that you understand what you've applied for. Secondly, that you have the knowledge, skills and competence for the role. And thirdly, that you're the best candidate at interview. And the interviewers will usually use a point system, and points will be awarded for each of your answers and your presentation to differentiate between candidates, which is why it's so important to prepare. There are a vast range of different questions you might be asked, but there will always be, like any interview, some standard questions that you can prepare for. So some generic questions here. For more specific specialist questions, as I mentioned earlier, you need to do your background research, your informal visit, drill down on that job description, look at your standards and policies. But there are generic questions you can prepare for that you could be asked for, similar to any job. Why have you applied for this role? What led you to apply? Why have you decided? It could be worded in any way, but you're going to be asked something about applying for the role. How would you define advanced clinical practice? What is advanced clinical practice? And previously at the beginning of this talk, I've gone through some really good resources to look at. What do you know about this post? Talk me through how this trainee post works. What are your expectations? Do you know what you'll be doing on this training program? What do you know about the multi-professional framework for advanced clinical practice? What do you know about the core capabilities of advanced practice framework? Or the question could link to the master's program that you're doing, linked to the program. Some more generic questions. Which of the 4 pillars of advanced practice is your strongest area? Or which area will you need the most support with? What do you know about our current service, the team you'll be working with, or our service priorities? What transferable skills do you have that align to this trainee post? How do you keep yourself up to date? How do you deliver evidence-based care? Or they might word it linked to high standards in your clinical practice. Give me an example where you've led a project in your current role, where you've influenced practice, where you've promoted quality care standards, or you've promoted evidence-based practice. If you are overcome with nerves or very worried prior to interview, it's normal. We all worry about interviews at whatever level we are. I have a video on overcoming nerves in a nursing interview. It'd be very applicable to other healthcare professionals, and some questions to ask at the end of a nursing interview as well that you might find helpful on my YouTube channel. I wish every single one of you success in any interviews you're going to, but there is a chance you might not be offered the role, and understandably it's going to be very disappointing, and it's a very competitive process, and you've done amazing by being just shortlisted. But my key tips are, if this happens, don't give up on those career aspirations. Learn from your interview feedback. Make sure you thank the interviewer for the opportunity, but then ask them for any advice on where you could have improved, what was your weakest area, what questions needed more work. Don't waste time on what if I'd said this. Sometimes it does take 2 or 3 attempts to get there. I've been in interviews for my first team leader role, and it took 3 goes to actually get there in the end, but I did it. And also it's helpful to remember to write down any key questions and feedback ready for your next interview. So my key tips for success are: allocate as much time as you can to prepare for your interview and presentation if you've got presentation. Systematically complete background research for your interview answers, and I've given you clear advice and resources. Align past and current experiences and examples to the 4 pillars of advanced practice, and ask for feedback if you're not offered the role. So some of the references for any of you, you can just stop the video and get the references. There's the other one. So good luck in all your interviews. If you have any questions, put them in the YouTube comments. Let me know if you found this useful. If you would rather contact me personally, you can DM me on Twitter or my website. Do check out my other videos, and if you're interested in buying any of my books, there's links in the description in YouTube. So good luck.